And just see how easily is it for you to take your attention from what you were doing, which was very interesting, to now being more a sense of yourself lying down. Okay. But you're not going to stay long on your backs, because that just wouldn't be in going with the series. So now come onto your hands and knees. That was a bit nasty, wasn't it? You never know. Okay, so you're going to put the top of your head on the floor and interlace your fingers around your head. So this is a bit of recap of what you did in the morning. I think have your hands a little bit away from your head on the floor so you can start doing that movement where you're rolling your pelvis towards your head and away from your head, and feeling that line of pressure going from your forehead to the back of the head. So this is familiar to you now, so just notice how it is. And sense the line of the pelvis going through the spine up to the forehead. And continue that movement, but change your knees so that one knee is a little bit further back than the other knee. So coming into that sort of asymmetry, and continue moving your pelvis forward and back and feeling how you trace a line from the forehead toward the back of your head. And what difference does it make in how, the trajectory of the pelvis with your legs in this position, and how you shift the weight up onto your head and arms. And what part of your spine is working in a different way possibly. And then change over your legs so that the leg that's further behind you is now closer to you. And try this pattern and notice the difference. Now, what's the difference in, so this is playing with your base of support. So how does the position of your knees and legs influence how you use your spine and pelvis to do this movement, which allows the weight shift from the forehead to the back of the head? And then leave it and take a rest. And it's nice seeing some people resting in different positions, and the ones that want to transition from their back into that same position, and those that have found another way to rest. And return to being on your knees again. And this time the right side of your face and the right ear on the floor. And your left arm is in a push-ups position. And you're going to explore putting your right arm through the gap toward the left. And do that a few times. And feel again that relationship of putting the right arm through the gap and where it leads your head, and you might even feel a shift of weight on your knees as you do it. And then start, bring your left foot into a running position and start straightening the left knee. And feel how, having done this now several times, where do you choose to place your left foot? If you place your left foot out to the side or more into the midline, it's going to affect how the force is transmitted or moves up to the shoulder that's on the ground. So you might want to explore a little bit the placement of that foot. And then come out of that position and bring your right arm out towards the right side. And feel again, now, is it now that you did it this morning, have you got a greater sense of where you like that arm to be? Now, if it's close to your shoulders or if it's a little lower down. And return to straightening the left knee and feeling how, as you come up onto your toes, how your pelvis shifts and how the weight comes more onto the right shoulder. And as you do that, of course, you've also can take in the movement of the placement of your head and the placement of your arm that's in a push-ups position, and thinking how that shift of weight from the foot goes up to the shoulder on the ground, and if that arm can start rolling again. So if you think in the previous movement or in the previous lesson, the arm rolled as a response to the movement coming up from the leg on the diagonal through the hip to the shoulder. And then let it go and take a rest. And return to your knees. And this time put your left side of your face or your left ear on the floor. And do the same movements as you did, but to this side. So start by putting the left arm underneath you to the right. And, you might want to just play a little bit with taking the arm underneath in different trajectories, feeling how the head follows, and then do some movements of straightening the opposite leg. So how the right knee can straighten, and how, I was thinking of just what Julie was saying about Nadal and where he and Federer and different activities of how the foot is such a flex, has so much potential for movement. So you might even like to add to your image, what parts of your foot do you use in this movement? Is it more toward the outside edge of the foot or the big toe? And does that make a difference to how the movement's transmitted up to the arm and the head and the upper torso? And then bring your left arm out to the left and continue the exploration. And again, you know, what have you learned from having done this previously that you can bring to the movement? So have you got a greater idea now of how to place the foot and straighten the knee, of where to place your head and the arms? And can you get that sense of the shoulder coming more to the floor, and as it comes to the floor, how the arm can roll? So the arm is rolling as a consequence of you shifting your weight. And lie on your backs and take a rest. And you can actually lie on your backs now, because we're going to continue from this position on the back. So you don't have to think that you're going to straight away have to move back onto your knees and hands. Now, whilst you're lying on your back, bend your knees and bring your feet to the floor. And now find a way to bring your pelvis off the floor so that you bring your feet somewhere over your body. So bringing your feet up into the air, and you can use your hands to support your pelvis. So your pelvis is off the floor and you're supporting your pelvis with your hands. And now in this position, start to take your knees towards your forehead and nose, and then away. So you're shifting your pelvis more towards your head so that your knees come to your face, and then the pelvis is shifting away and your knees are also moving away from your forehead. So both knees are coming toward the head and then away. And you can use, you know, your hands to help you with the movement. So your hands you can actually have, you know, supporting your pelvis, and, you know, use your hands. Could even imagine it was somebody else having their hands there, and they will help guiding your pelvis more towards your head so the knees come towards the forehead and then away from your head. And feel how that starts to shift the weight onto the area between your shoulder blades. And really think of bending your knees down and then lengthening above you. And how the pelvis moves. And then just allow your pelvis to return to the floor. And feel how it can sort of, again, come to the floor And then your legs you can take a rest with your legs long. So now we're coming at the same movement, but in this different orientation. And, you know, sometimes it is that thing of changing orientation can just fill in some gap, maybe in your learning or in your image, that then can be carried across to the other way of doing the movement. So come back into that same position of having your pelvis in the air and your legs up to the ceiling, and you're holding on to your pelvis with both hands. But now you're just going to bring your right knee towards your face whilst your left leg stays more toward the ceiling. And you can do a few times just bringing the right knee down and again feeling, does that shift the weight more on one shoulder than the other? And then bring the left knee down. So you can alternate. And as you alternate, notice, are you now doing the movement only in your legs, or is your pelvis also moving? So does your pelvis continue to shift a little bit towards your head to allow one knee to come towards the forehead? And then the other knee. And what's the shift across that very upper part of your back and between your shoulder blades? And are you getting the sense of possibility that you could balance between your two shoulder blades? And how easy is it to, you know, still have in your attention the relationship of your pelvis with your head? Because, I mean, it's just the total opposite of standing where the head is on top, when now your pelvis is closer to the ceiling and your head on the floor. And then slowly find a way to bring your pelvis back to the floor. So again, you know, is there a thing of like doing it, I was going to use the word control, I don't know, or a possibility, if you think of the idea of reversibility, can you bring it down slowly that if you had to, you could change the direction at any time? So just don't go clunk, but you do it more slowly. And it's interesting thinking of, you know, Julie talking about the tennis, because I was talking to a few people in the break and saying, you know, thinking of this function of rolling and when people would use it in your daily life. And I mean, in Aikido, you do these judo rolls, but you also do what's called a break fall, which is basically learning to fall on your side in a way that you don't hurt yourself. And the most exciting rolly thing you do in Aikido is called a high fall, which is like a judo roll, but when it's funny because in Aikido you don't throw a person, but the person is thrown, not because it's a subtlety, but it's a thing like an intent. So my intention isn't to throw somebody, but the person is thrown because of how I'm just going through my own process and doing the technique. But anyway, so what I was thinking of, that high fall is a thing where as you're thrown, the person keeps holding on to your hand or part of your body so that you haven't got the ground to roll over, but you do a flip in the air. And I was saying, you know, I was having a chat to Narayan and thinking, you know, now that's a wonderful idea of rolling, but how else is it used in our society? And he came up with the thing of sport again, that if you look, and I saw it on TV the other night in the cricket, that the wicketkeeper made a catch, but he had to sort of leap forward to get the ball, but then he skillfully just did one of these judo rolls out of it and kept on moving. And Narayan was saying it happens a lot in rugby, and, you know, that idea, because that's very much that sport where there's a lot of clashing and moving quickly, that so not to get hurt, people can take a roll. And now return to that same position of having your legs overhead and supporting your pelvis with the hands. And feel now, how do you come up into that position more easily? Or now how do you come up into that position? So you've got your pelvis in the air and you're supporting your pelvis with your hands. And now in that configuration, you're just having your knees over your head, but you're thinking without doing to start with. Just think of your feet going over to the floor, but don't do it straight away, but see if you can think it. And as you think it, just gently press the back of your head into the floor and then let it go. And do that a few times of just thinking of pressing the back of the head into the floor and letting it go. And then start to explore bringing both feet to the floor above your head. And again, it doesn't mean they have to come to the floor. They can just come somewhere toward the floor. And sense how your pelvis continues to move and you shift your weight. And how your upper back has to move. And then take 1 foot at a time to the floor. So you can have 1 foot more up toward the ceiling and then bring the other foot to the floor. And it's more in that direction. So I'm not saying that you have to have, do a big scissor movement, but more just thinking of how 1 foot at a time could come to the floor. And again, how does that shift the weight on your shoulders? And is it still beneficial to be holding your pelvis? Because some people in the room are kind of fast forwarding and having their arms just down by their side as they do the movement. But for now in the lesson, he still suggests that you can use your hands in any way to support your pelvis. And if you're not doing the movement, but you want to watch how other people are, feel free to do that. And then leave it and come back to lying on your back. And then I'm just going to continue on with all the conversations I've had, or some of the conversations I've had with people here today. And I was talking to Beck, and I forget who she was working with, my apologies, but, we were talking about the ability for people like that wicketkeeper or in football to roll over the shoulder. And Beck was saying at her primary school how the girls have started to play football. So quite, I'm not sure quite what age group, but in primary school, and how there's been a lot of injuries. And so we just talked about how in our society, and of course it's a generalisation, but often, little boys will be playing and they'll be doing that rough and tumble and mucking about on the floor and maybe bumping into each other, when girls tend not to do that as much. And so they're learning how to use their bodies in a different way, and they're not used to, when they get into something like football, of how to organise themselves to be soft when they clash with someone, or how to maybe take a little role if that's what's required. Which is, again, if you think about what we do in our work with function and how the activities that we do, how that really affects our organisation. And so now we're going to play with our organisation on this thing, and you're going to hook your big toe of your right foot with your right index finger and hook your left big toe with your left index finger. And then you're going to just playfully rock and roll backward and forward and feeling how you can bring your feet overhead. And so it might not be the whole way overhead, but in that configuration, can you use the connection of your fingers with your toes to help bring your pelvis overhead and your feet into the air, maybe up above your head. And for some people it might be helpful, and for some people not. And I mean, we did a bit this the other day in the ATM with Julie of, holding onto the feet, but now I'm not getting you to interlace your feet, I'm just getting you to hold onto your big toes, which is also interesting if you think of what Feldenkrais was doing with Larry, and just shifting your weight by playfully bringing your feet and legs into the air. And then either having your fingers holding onto your big toes, bring your feet overhead, or otherwise you can let, your big toes go and bring your pelvis overhead and the feet up into the air. And you can use your hands whichever way you like for now, but just start exploring taking your legs apart and bringing them together. So how can you move your legs apart and together? And in the lesson, he doesn't say if you hold on to your big toes still as you do the movement or let go. So I think you can, explore it. If you need to, you can support your pelvis, but have the idea of the feet moving to the floor above your head and how you can open and close your legs. And your legs don't need to be particularly straight. It doesn't matter if they're a little bit bent. But feel again, how you can start taking balance across your shoulder blades. And then slowly bring your pelvis to the floor and allow your legs to go long and take a rest. And now we're going to see what effect this has had when you come onto your knees and hands again. So come onto your knees and have your right arm out to the side and the right side of your face on the floor. So your arms, it's not underneath you now, your arm's out on the side. So your right arm's out to the right. It's approximately, somewhere at shoulder level or a bit lower down, at the place where you found it easiest to shift your weight across and roll the arm. And return to straightening your left knee. And feel now as you straighten your left knee, is it changing how easy it's to shift your weight on the right arm? And you can again, notice how you take weight on that right shoulder. And again, you can play with where you have your arm in a push-ups position. And then you can start to explore how would it be to bring your toes of your right foot into a running position and straighten your right knee. And you can do it one leg straightening and then the other leg. And then you can allow both knees to straighten. And again, just go slowly, but feel how, in a sense, it's bringing you into a similar position, that you can bring your pelvis into the air instead of starting on your back and swinging your legs above your head. What is the possibility of bringing the pelvis into the air here with both feet on the floor? And how that requires, so you're not rolling over, but you're just finding how can you balance on that upper part of your back or between the shoulder blades. And if that's a possibility for you now or not. And remember, we've still got tomorrow to explore these things. Because, it's a very different thing. And if it's something that's possible for you to do, how could you balance across your shoulders and bring your feet to start walking on the floor from left to right? How can you start walking your feet up towards your head, towards the arm that's in a push-ups position, and then bringing it back? And is it possible to move your feet in a way that you can take your knees to either side of your head? And then leave it and take a rest. And I think for myself, I found it really intriguing doing these movements because I had a certain capacity to do it when I was lying on my back and I swung my legs up and brought them toward the floor. I had a modicum of control of moving my legs from side to side and my pelvis in the air. But when I came from the other orientation, there's something that was still missing in my image or that I wasn't involving in the movement that made it difficult or, pretty much impossible to do. Well, if I only knew. That's what I'm going home to find out. Okay. Okay. So now come onto your knees and bring your left ear to the floor. And put your arms in a push-up position. So both arms are in a push-ups position and the left side of your face is on the floor. And all that we've done, you could now sense you know, where do you want to place your head in relationship to the midline or underneath your arm, more towards your arm so it's comfortable? And just start moving your pelvis forward and back so that you're drawing a line, that vertical line from your forehead to your chin. And see, is that easier? So we're going back to one of the earlier movements and just sensing all this that we've done of organising the middle of the back and how you shift your weight, if that's informed you so that you can change the pressure on the left side of the face from the forehead down to the chin. And then when you've done that a few times, just roll or turn your head to the right and do the same exploration with your head to the right. And if you like, you can go a little bit from one side to the other or just explore the right side. And then choose your preferred side for yourself to have your head, either to the left or to the right. And then bring that one arm out to the side. So if your right side of your face is on the floor, your right arm's going to be out to the right at approximately shoulder level. And if it's the left side of your face, you're going to bring the left arm out to the side. And then just play with the possibility of now bringing both legs up into the air. And this time seeing what would it be like if you could walk your feet more towards your head. So not as much left and right, but is it possible to bring your feet more towards, through the midline, walking up towards your head and back? And then leave it and take a rest on your back. And now we're going to have just one more little exploration of a similar thing, but in the other orientation. And by that I mean now just swing your legs up in the air and bring your feet as much as possible overhead. And is it possible here to have your arms out by your side? So can you find a way to balance across your shoulders with your arms out by your side? And think here, how would you walk your feet around from left to right? And what would have to happen in your head? How would your head have to accommodate this movement? You say arms are out by your side. If you can balance like that, if you still need to use your arms on your pelvis to balance over your shoulders, do that. But see if it's possible to take your arms away. And then you're just thinking of how you could, wherever your feet are, if they're on the floor or in the air, how could you imagine walking them left to right? And how would that influence the pressure over your shoulders and how your head would need to organize itself to adjust with the movement. And you can help with your arms if that's beneficial. And then find a way to come back to just lying with your legs long on your back. And take a rest and sense the effect the lessons had on. Now, how much ground do you have now? And as in the other lessons, the last movement is just rolling your head from side to side. But playing with, which I found really intriguing, how can you move your eyes more quickly than your head from side to side? And if you can just have a play with that, or just roll your head a little bit and sense how now what's the freedom of movement in your neck and in your head, and how much of yourself, now as you're rolling your head, how far down your spine have you a sense of that movement? And then let the head find a place to pause. And in whichever way you like, now slowly transition up to standing. And notice what you feel when you're in standing. You might think of your feet on the ground, where you're looking, and then take a walk around the room.
If you'd like to just potter yourselves into the middle for a moment.